Hey, it's Coach with Tactical Hyve. Today I'm not on the range, so I'm gonna have a adult beverage here and talk to you guys about my list of 5 biggest small arms weapons failures during my time. Oh yeah, that's good. So a little bit of background on myself. When I wasn't running and gunning, I was involved in procurement and testing of weapon systems for naval special warfare. I did it on both coasts, and sometimes we'd hit it out of the park, and sometimes we didn't. All right, so this is going to be my top 5 list of, well, everybody likes top 5 list for some reason. So we'll start off with number 5. So number 5 is going to be the Mark 23 Mod O offensive handgun. And back in 1991, one of the guys at Warcom, Special Warfare Command, a guy named RJ, had used the 45, the 1911A1 to really good effect back in Vietnam. And he figured we needed an upgraded version of that. So that's where we started. SOCOM was a new entity at the time, that Special Operations Command, where you have Army, Navy, Air Force, all together, all the Special Operations commands were, attached in that way, right? Anyway, so we started the program and said, all right, we want this new gun, and we want this leap forward. So we wanted, got to remember, this is 1991. A lot of these technologies were brand new. So the suppressors were huge. The laser, oh my God, putting a laser on a gun was just, are you kidding me? Can we do that? That was the attitude. So we wanted this big improvement over the 1911A1. So they wrote up a requirement and they submitted it to SOCOM. Well, if you want SOCOM money, everybody has to buy in. So the Army and the Air Force, as well as the Navy, had to buy into this program. So before they would do that, they put their 2 cents in. And they said, no, I wanted to do this. And then the Army said, no, I wanted to do this as well. So just like a camel is a horse that was created by a committee, this became our camel. All these things were added to it, and nobody seemed to remember that someone was going to carry this thing. And it got heavy and big. It's a great gun to shoot on the range, but it was huge. And when we finally got it, it started showing up around 1996. About the same time I got to the command, so we kind of started our careers together there on the East Coast. It was there, guys, we took delivery of it, and everybody kind of stared at it and like, what are we going to do with this thing? Because even the biggest guys on the team, it looked like a freaking Desert Eagle. It was giant. You couldn't put it in a holster. I mean, there was a holster for it, but if you put it on your hip, it'd be hanging past your knee. It really wasn't ideal. Like I said, it was a really good gun. It was accurate. It had all this cool new technology. It had a light and a laser on it, and this can that was actually really quiet. And 45 is subsonic anyway, so it made sense. The only time that we ever used it, and we brought it with us, I didn't have it in a holster and like that. It was just in case you were going to have to you're planning on running into a sentry that would have to be taken out, and it could do that quietly. But that you had to be planning that up. You weren't going to just bring this along for the ride just in case. Later on, the biggest users of it, the guys who got to actually utilize it during the GWOT, were snipers, because they're running around with the big heavy sniper rifle on their back, but they'd have to clear a building in order to get to their shooting position, and they have to do it quietly. So they'd bring this thing along, and that was the one thing that it actually got used for. The reason it's a bust, it's not used anymore because it was too heavy and nobody wanted to use it. And eventually in the late 2000s, it was replaced by, well, frankly, the next mod from H&K, which was the compact version. So the USP was born. That's our suppressed 45, still in service today. All right, so number 4 is the Enhanced Grenade Launcher Module, or EGLM. This was an idea, it was part of the SCAR program. It was the grenade launcher that was to replace the M203 in the SCAR program. And again, try to make these big leaps and bounds in improvement. This is circa early 2000s is when this thing started, developing it through FN. Straight out of the box, they try to put too much into it. Okay, it's a good gun, it's an accurate gun, but it's heavy, it's over-engineered. The M203 just butts up against the breech. This one had a locking breech so that you could add a higher impulse charge. So you could launch the same projectile even farther, or a heavier projectile out to the same distance. They really wanted to add a fire control unit. And the idea behind this is that it would incorporate a laser rangefinder. So you would laser the target and it would give you a firing solution. It would change the little red dot on the screen. So you just put it right there and pull the trigger, and that's where that round would go. And it sounded great. I mean, I talked about programmable ammunition, so you could have an air burst in case the guy's entrenched, that kind of thing. So that was the big push, was for this really high tech stuff, which is expensive, by the way. And what it turned out when they first showed up, the fire control unit, the FCU, looked like a freaking lunchbox on the top of this thing. It was huge. And it didn't work quite as well as advertised, okay? Again, pushing the edge of technology at the time. Now, in Afghanistan, I carried an M203 on a Knight's Armament mount that made it a standalone gun. So instead of having a 203 attached to your M4, making it heavy and less maneuverable, you have this strapped around on your back and run around with your light gun in your hands. And if you need to throw a bomb at somebody, you pull that off and let it rip. So they set the EGLM that way as well. It would mount to the SCAR. Trigger modules, there was 3 of them because you had a SCAR light, a SCAR heavy, and then the standalone. So you had 3 different trigger modules. So again, starting to get too complex. They moved it back so that now the trigger was down here on your pistol grip or your rifle, not out in front. So that helped by moving the center of gravity back, made the gun feel a little bit lighter, but it just got really bulky. And then when they canceled the Mark 16, the 5.56 SCAR went away. No more SCAR light. Nobody put that thing on a SCAR heavy. It just made the thing just way too bulky. So again, it was a good gun, way over-engineered, okay? Towards the end of its service life, which, I mean, it showed up in about 2009, it was fielded, and about 2019, we got rid of them all. But up until that time, some guys had used it to really good effect, because I don't know, the 40 millimeter round is not as lethal as advertised. I mean, it's a fairly light load of explosive. So you've got to hit very close to your threat in order to cause damage, right? So you need to get good, accurate fire. The FCU nobody used. It was too big, too bulky. But L3 makes EOTech, made a modified one that you could put on there. And I have reports from the field of direct hits at decent ranges, 150 yards, and in and around there. Direct hits on targets, then that was a good effect there, okay? We kind of let go of the whole high-tech idea here. The improved rounds that were promised never materialized, so we didn't have a round that could shoot farther or shoot more explosive out to maximum range. So none of that showed up. So we phased those out, and now we phased in a lightweight standalone grenade launcher our guys are using now. It's the H&K 320. All right, so the next one will be number 3. Number 3 is a breaching shotgun. Now, breaching shotguns, they're awesome. I carried them, nice shorty. Again, you hang off your body and deal with breaching issues when you needed them. And then somebody got a really good idea that, hey, We got a grenade launcher mounted under our M16. Why not put a shotgun there? It's already in your hand. Yeah. So the first one I ever saw was in the 80s. And it was crude, didn't make a lot of sense, but that was the 80s, you had to be there, right? So I've seen, actually, it started off in the movies, I guess, and a lot of good ideas start there. And the ones I saw were modifications that had been done with 870s. Took a shorty 870 and somehow attached it to the bottom of your M16. And I've seen it done a bunch of different ways. The only one, we had one in the armory when I first got to the command, and no one ever used the damn thing. And I know why. It was heavy, bulky, it was hard to, it made your primary weapon slower to, incorporate, and it really didn't help. It wasn't any faster when it came to breaching for us. So I'll just give that one a straight up bust across the board. It was a bad idea. And, again, same thing with the 40 millimeter grenade launcher. You don't want it on your gun. You want it slung on your body because you want a nice light gun when it comes to fighting. So next is the Enhanced Battle Rifle, or the Mark 14. This was a gun, wasn't even really a gun. It was just a chassis stock system that they, again, were trying to make the M14, which was our only 7.62 battle rifle that we still had in inventory, but you couldn't attach anything to it. No lights, no lasers, no cool, go fast gear, right? So if we've got to figure out a way to put rails on this thing. So they went to NSWC Crane and said, hey, what can we do? Well, those guys, the guy running the program out there, I heard, was a bench rest shooter, and he really didn't care about how much stuff weighed. And he's like, the only way to get this thing accurate is to build a chassis stock out of aluminum, and here's this cool buttstock that folds in and has all these cool adjustments. And that's how they sold it. And again, it kind of got away from us, because we seeded it out to the wrong people. And what we finally got back was this, the one thing that they did right is they shortened the barrel down to 18 inches. So we had an 18-inch 7.62 battle rifle that weighed just, I don't know the final weight, because once you put optics and other stuff on it, the damn thing was probably 15 pounds, okay? Nobody wanted to use it. It was too big. Some guys did use it because they're like big on that 7.62. And remember, this is back in the early 2000s when this started. Bullet technology has come a long way. At the time, 45 and 7.62, that was your good death deliverance systems, right? You hit somebody with 7.62, yeah, they know it. Same with 45, right? So we wanted this big gun, be able to reach out farther and be able to attach the stuff that you needed to fight at night. So some guys rolled with that big heavy behemoth, and other guys just took the gun, the receiver and barrel out of that and put it in an old fiberglass stock. And that worked pretty darn good. There was a couple other modifications that you could get. I mean, I saw anywhere from guys basically screwing in pieces of rail into a fiberglass stock and lined up their light and their laser with that. And there was other companies that will actually make an attachment that would give you a rail on the top of your barrel. Okay, so both of those were systems that I've seen and used, and they actually work pretty good, and they make a decent light gun. And then you have a shorter, handier barrel instead of the big 20-something inch, miles long barrel that came with the stock M14. So eventually, the team and they started getting Veltor, and there was another company that made Troy made a stock that you could just take that barrel and action, drop it in, and it was a lot lighter, a lot sleeker, and guys liked that one a whole lot better. So again, it was a capability that we were trying to make, and it wasn't done right. They grabbed just rack grade M14s off the wall and mounted them in these chassis stocks. Wasn't a sniper gun, it was a battle rifle. So that's what we got, a battle rifle. You know, some of these accuracy was an issue. And guys used those up until the SCAR came out. And then the SCAR Heavy hit. It had its growing pains, but you know, it quickly replaced the EBR in most everybody's armory. And now for number one. The XM8, Heckler and Koch XM8. Now this one, I'm sure was a fever dream of some politician that went and saw the movie Aliens back in 1986 when it came out. So they're watching Sigourney Weaver and a bunch of space marines run around the planet shooting aliens with the M41A1 pulse rifle, and thought, wow, that thing has a bullet shooting gun and a grenade launching gun on it that's semi-automatic. Why can't we do that right now? So they got some money together. Honestly, I don't know where this came from, but it rolled into the OICW, the Objective Individual Combat Weapon. And this thing was enormous. But hey, you put it out there and say, hey, this is what we want. And a bunch of companies, I know H&K is the one that got the nod for it, but there were at least half a dozen other companies that put in bids for this thing. Well, as they develop this, it shows up and it's the size of a freaking guitar case, weighs way too much and makes absolutely no sense. So H&K, being some smart guys, they're like, hey, you know, we just separate these two. We take the grenade launcher and we'll make its individual thing, and then we'll take the gun and we'll make its own individual thing, and then maybe later we'll kind of work them back in together. I'm not sure what they were thinking. So they take this thing, and it was basically a G3 setup, but they wanted to make it light, and they really went overboard with the light. I think the thing weighed less than 6 pounds, but they used a lot of polymer in there, and that became an issue. During testing, there were some issues, let's just say. They were looking, H&K was also, they were looking at this 1 million gun order for the Army. I'm like, wow, we're gonna make 1 million guns for the Army. Well, about this same time, the SCAR program showed up. And that was just for SOF. That was like a 90,000 gun order. So they weighed it up and said, well, if we submit this to the SCAR and it loses, then we're going to lose our 1 million gun order. So they didn't bother playing in the SCAR. They didn't make a bid, nothing. Didn't submit an XM8, a 416, anything to the SCAR program solicitation. So then as this goes down, they have weapons, they're testing them. Again, issues with testing, but the thing that really killed the XM8 wasn't just the fact that it looks kind of like a fish, but remember back all those other companies that made a bid for the OICW program. Well, that was for the combined weapon. Okay, that was what the Army was actually ordering. So H&K, by changing that and just making the gun, well, they opened themselves up to all kinds of lawsuits from the other companies. So that just put an end to that program right there. And honestly, I think we dodged a bullet. It wasn't that good a gun. So there you go. That's my top 5 weapons fails during the time I was active. And what can I say? They can all be winners. As always, if you like this content, like, subscribe, and leave me some comments. Tell me what you think of the new format.